It's so glad you could join us. You could be listening on the FMAM dial, the Occupy Democrats Network, anywhere on social media, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, everywhere. And we're glad you make us a part of your day. We have so much to get to today, and we got some great guests lined up for you today as well. In speaking of the State of the Union address, we're going to get reaction from Congressman Eric Swalwell. He's going to be joining us at the bottom of the hour. What was it like to be there? What was it like to see the expressions on some of these Republicans and their faces? What was it like after? We certainly want to get that from Congressman Swalwell, and he's nice enough to be joining us coming up at the bottom of the hour. We're going to be talking about Katie Britt. And I got to be honest with you, the Republican response, Katie Britt out of Alabama, sounded to me a little bit like this lady, if you recall. Her name is Kimberly Guilfoyle.
The best is yet to come.
I don't know. Maybe they're related. I don't know, ladies and gentlemen. Katie Britt was, first of all, I think she took an acting class from Kirk Cameron, number one. I think we should throw her an AVN award. I think there are porn actors and actresses that do a much better job acting than Katie Britt did. We'll get to that coming up a little bit later in the program. But let me give you my initial reaction to what we saw last night. First of all, for all of you on the far right out there that think you're physicians, that talk about Joe Biden's alleged cognitive difficulties, will you just put it to rest now? The man spoke. He was there for 2 hours. He did just fine. Besides a few coughs here and there, he could have used a glass of water. The man did absolutely fine. He touched on all the important topics. He joked about his age. He trolled Republicans, rightfully so. And he did use the word predecessor, even though he didn't use Donald Trump's name. He did use that word 13 times, which I did enjoy. And there were some important parts of this speech. But before we even get to the actual speech itself, Manu Raju from CNN caught up with Marjorie Taylor Greene before the speech. And Marjorie Taylor Greene made the case that she thought that Biden would probably be on drugs during his speech. This was before the speech. Manu Raju catching up with three-toe Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Well, if he's a liar, he should be called out. That's important to do, and people really care about that.
So you might call him out tonight on the floor of the House.
I have no idea what he's going to say, and I would argue that Joe Biden has no idea what he's saying, too. So they're probably working up a good drug cocktail mix over there at the White House. So we'll see how he talks tonight, and then I'll decide then.
Yeah, so despicable statements from a despicable, disgusting trash of a human being in Marjorie Taylor Greene. She showed up into the chambers wearing a Donald Trump hat that was signed by Donald Trump and a whole bunch of getup that she was wearing. Can you imagine in the days where Donald Trump was president, and if an Ocasio-Cortez or somebody like that walked into the chambers right before the State of the Union wearing a signed Joe Biden hat and all the getup that Marjorie Taylor Greene was wearing, Republicans would be going after them and calling them despicable, disgusting people. But guess what? The Democrats in the House chambers don't do that. As far as I've been alive, 43 years, they never have. But yet Marjorie Taylor Greene, three-toe Greene, who is absolute trash, walks in there with her MAGA hat looking like a complete moron cultist that she is. It's so disgusting and it's so deplorable. Now, I thought there were some really good moments last night for Joe Biden. I thought an interesting one was when Pete Buttigieg stood up and he started laughing when Joe Biden called out Republicans for literally so many of them taking credit for this infrastructure bill and these investments they voted against. In my personal opinion, this might have been the best part of the night, just trolling these Republicans, something that Joe Biden helped pass. And it's made so many people in these jurisdictions run by Republicans, and now they're bragging about how this is so great and it's making us money, but yet they all voted against it. Have a listen to this.
And thanks to our bipartisan infrastructure law, 46,000 new projects have been announced all across your communities. And by the way, I noticed some of you strongly voted against it, or they're cheering on that money coming in. I like it. I'm with you.
You got to love these Republicans, right? So many of them voted against it. But then they brag about it. They brag about this infrastructure deal, and they brag about all the money it's made them. yet they voted against it. They're not, this happens all the time with the Republicans. A bill that, some Republicans obviously voted for it, bipartisan bill, but a lot of Republicans voted against it, and now they're taking credit for it. Literally, you can't make this stuff up. Pete Buttigieg standing up with this big smile on his face. I just thought it was absolutely priceless, and that was a really good moment. In my opinion, this was the most important part of the speech. Joe Biden had to talk about the issues that are taking place at the border, and he did. And it's a moment where he's talking about this border immigration bill, a bipartisan bill put together by people like James Lankford, MAGA Republicans, who negotiated with Democrats, and they worked together to try to put this bill together. And as Joe Biden is attacking the Republicans, like the Mike Johnsons of the world, the morons sitting behind him, the accountability partner, him and his son, he's talking about this immigration bill that Mike Johnson said, as soon as it hits my desk, nope, signing off on it. You won't even take a look at the bill. Nope, it won't pass. And then they show a picture of James Lankford sitting there, nodding his head. Yes, yes, nodding his head when Joe Biden is talking about this bill. It's really mesmerizing, and I thought it was one of the most important parts of this speech. Have a listen to this.
I would respectfully suggest my Republican friends owe it to the American people, get this bill done. We need to act now.
So as this is happening, and as Joe Biden is talking about this immigration bill that so many MAGA Republicans refuse to pass, James Lankford, who Trump once said was really strong on immigration, big Trump supporter, is nodding his head in agreement with Joe Biden, while all these coward Republicans that are sitting behind him shaking their head, no, no. I just thought it made the Republicans look so bad, and there were so many other moments that night last night that made the Republicans look so bad, and that was certainly one of them. Then we move on to Katie Britt, ladies and gentlemen. That's right, Katie Britt. And again, I think she sounded a lot like Kimberly Guilfoyle years back.
The best is yet to come.
Yes, the only difference is Kimberly Guilfoyle wasn't sitting in a kitchen. What does it say about the Republican Party? You could have put Katie Britt on a podium anywhere in the state of Alabama. But Republicans, I would imagine most likely men, middle-aged men that happen to be Republicans, decided, I know what we're going to do with Katie Britt. We're going to put her sitting down in a kitchen because that's where we believe women belong. I mean, you want to talk about bizarro world and just beyond strange. I'm not making this up. Katie Britt is sitting about 10 feet in front of her $10,000 refrigerator. What a great way to resonate with middle America living paycheck to paycheck while Katie Britt is speaking in a kitchen with a $10,000 fridge. You cannot make this stuff up. This is the point of the speech. And by the way, I will add that it looked like Katie went to maybe Kirk Cameron's first year of acting class. I'm not being facetious. I'm being honest with you. She couldn't get a job acting in a porn movie, let alone Tom Arnold. My friend Tom Arnold said it best. He went on social media today. He said, Katie Britt is such a bad actress, she couldn't even gotten a role in one of my bad movies. He's right. It was overdramatic. It was embarrassing. It was awkward. And Republicans decided to put this woman sitting down in a kitchen because sadly, in many of these Republicans, that's how they feel about women. Some of these Republicans want to go back to the days where women weren't even allowed to vote. So should we be surprised? You want to talk about bizarro world, and you want to talk about hypocrisy, because this is the moment where Katie Britt is talking about a very serious topic and a difficult topic to talk about, which is rape. Have a listen to this.
I traveled to the Del Rio sector of Texas. That's where I spoke to a woman who shared her story with me. She had been sex trafficked by the cartels starting at the age of 12. She told me not just that she was raped every day, but how many times a day she was raped.
I think any decent human being with a brain would say that is horrible. Rape is one of the worst crimes and atrocities anybody can do on somebody. And this is horrible, right? Any reasonable person, regardless of how genuine you think Katie Britt is. But here's the interesting part. Katie Britt is the biggest Donald Trump staunch supporter. Last I checked, Donald Trump was just found liable, a jury of his peers, for sexual abuse. The judge in the case characterized it as rape. I'm going to go by what the judge said. So in essence, Katie Britt is talking about how horrible rape is, trying to score political points of a woman that was brutally raped, which is awful. I wouldn't wish that upon anybody. It's terrible. Yet she wants you to support a rapist. Let me repeat. Katie Britt is talking about rape, yet she wants you to vote for the orange man who has had 25 women who have accused him of sexual assault or rape, including Donald Trump's ex-wife, in a deposition under oath in court documents. Donald Trump's ex-wife, who has since passed away, said under oath that her husband raped her. And yet Katie is trying to lecture us about rape while she sits in her kitchen next to her $10,000 refrigerator. Folks, you can't make this up. It's the epitome of hypocrisy and stupidity and bigotry. Who are the intelligent people that said, hey, Katie, we want you sitting in a kitchen? And you want to lecture me about rape? By the way, small little tidbit there that Katie didn't mention. That woman who was raped, God forbid, if anybody you know is raped, Katie wants to force women to have that rape baby. Just another little small portion of rape that Katie didn't share with the American people. So on one hand, she's lecturing us about how horrible rape is, which I would agree, it's terrible. What happened to this woman at the border, terrible. Yet she supports a rapist. Yet she believes, doesn't matter if a young girl, God forbid, is 13 years old or 30 years old, if a woman is raped, she should be forced to have that rape baby. But, you know, Katie won't talk about that. The Republicans won't talk about that. Oh, yes, Joe Biden did bring up the abortion issue. Katie is an extremist. We also know that she's an extremely bad actress. We learned that last night as well. We also learned that they have a very expensive refrigerator, $10,000. Here's the over-dramatic nut, Katie Britt, going on in what was probably one of the weirdest speeches I've ever seen.
Mr. President, enough is enough. Innocent Americans are dying, and you only have yourself to blame. Fulfill your oath of office. Reverse your policies. End this crisis and stop the suffering.
I mean, again, I think it sounded a lot like our very good friend, Kimberly Guilfoyle. That's seriously. I mean, do you disagree with me? I mean, this really, she sounded like this lady.
The best is yet to come.
Again, the only difference is Guilfoyle wasn't speaking in a kitchen. Ladies and gentlemen, Katie Britt was an embarrassment to Republicans last night. It looked like an SNL skit. I spoke to a lot of Republicans last night that were literally embarrassed by what they saw. Can you imagine what that roundtable discussion must have been when the Republican Party decided to have Katie Britt speak in response to the State of the Union? Hey, where do you think where should we have Katie speak? Well, we want to resonate with the American people. Maybe she should speak in the home. Oh, okay. Should we speak in the living room? Should we have her set her up in the living room or maybe in her backyard? No, I think Katie should be speaking in the kitchen. Can you imagine the idiocy of some of these Republicans, some of these dumbasses that decided that they wanted Katie to be speaking in a kitchen? I spoke to a lot of Republicans yesterday, women, by the way, who were embarrassed at that decision and insulted, and rightfully so, they should be. This is why there are more minorities and more women within the Democrat Party that are holding office than in the Republican Party, because when they have a woman speak after the State of the Union, they have her speak in a kitchen in front of her $10,000 refrigerator. It is embarrassing. Katie Britt's performance, because that's what I would call it, it was a performance, was embarrassing. And it was fake anger. We could see that on her face. She's a very bad actress. There was no real empathy. She just tried to score political points. Now, if you really care, as Katie said, about innocent Americans dying, let's use her own terminology. Innocent Americans dying. Why don't you talk about all of our children that have been gunned down in our schools? Why don't you talk about all the gun violence in this country? Why don't you talk about the hate crimes in this country? Why don't you ever talk about police brutality? Why don't, if you really want to talk about innocent Americans dying, then why don't you talk about the rise in hate crimes and the gun violence? But no, you won't hear Kate talk about that. Is the border problem an issue? Yes, it is. But Republicans like Katie Britt only bring it up when it's politically convenient for them. And then when you have a bill, a bipartisan bill worked on by MAGA Republicans like James Lankford, a MAGA Republican, staunch Donald Trump supporter, and you have MAGA Republicans that sit at the table, no bill is going to be perfect. The left isn't 100% on board with it. The right's not 100% on board with it. But you negotiate and you bargain. And there are good things in the bill. Many Republicans would agree. And as James Lankford yesterday is nodding his head in agreement with Joe Biden, you have a bunch of coward, spineless Republicans that are sitting behind him that wouldn't even read the bill. And you have Mike Johnson with his stupid smirks sitting behind Joe Biden. You know, it's interesting. Everybody wants to make fun of and mock on the right Nancy Pelosi for ripping up the speech. But when Joe Biden is talking about helping kids read, giving them food and lunch and breakfast if their family can't afford it, when Joe Biden talks about things that should not be political, things that would help children and educate children, you have that moron, Mike Johnson, rolling his eyes and shaking his head. What a stupid fool Mike Johnson is, and what an embarrassment he is to this country. The guy who tried to overturn the outcome of the 2020 election. And God forbid, if Joe Biden talks about January 6th, he nods his head like January 6th didn't happen. Because that's what these MAGA Republicans are. That's who they are, because they have no moral compass, and that's what they do. Mike Johnson will ever be known for the guy who shook his head and made smirks and stupid faces. I'm sure he practiced that all day. How can you shake your head when a president, Republican or Democrat, is talking about our kids and them getting an education and learning how to read and helping them at school lunch or whatever? How? But that's what Mike Johnson did when Joe Biden talked about the threat that Donald Trump poses to our democracy and talked about January 6th. People like Mike Johnson, they seem to forget what happened that day when many of those in the chambers, many Republicans were running for their lives. And McCarthy the next day, hours later, said Donald Trump bears some responsibility for what took place on January 6th. But no, these Republicans, they care more about remaining in office and remaining in power than speaking the truth. And that's exactly what Joe Biden did yesterday. He spoke the truth. As an 81-year-old man, he was there for 2 hours, and he looked just fine. Nobody gave him any cocktails or drugs. And the people who were embarrassed that day were, quite frankly, the Republicans, who are obsessed about our border and the issues at the border. But then when you have a bill put forth bipartisan-wise, by the way, they won't vote for it. They won't even, as soon as it hits their desk, boom, rip it up. Joe Biden hit on all the important issues that are facing the American people today. He talked about the economy. He talked about inflation. He talked about the wars, the war in the Ukraine. He talked about what was happening in Israel, and I appreciate what he said. He said Israel does have a right to defend themselves. Hamas are the ones that started this. We need to get rid of Hamas, but at the same time, Israel does need to take some responsibility and make sure there's a low portion of innocent civilians that lose their lives. I agree with Joe Biden. I agree with what he said about Israel and the Palestinian conflict. I agree with what he said about Ukraine and the war in the Ukraine and Vladimir Putin being the evil, murderous dictator that he is. I agree. But going back to Katie Britt, this is who the Republican Party is today. Now, I'm not saying every Republican out there thinks that a woman belongs in the kitchen. I would never make a generalization in a statement like that. But what I will say is that the Republicans, and I would imagine some of the higher-ups, made the decision to put Katie Britt in a kitchen, sitting down in a kitchen a few feet away from her $10,000 refrigerator. Boy, what a great way to resonate with middle America, ladies and gentlemen. That's what the Republican Party did. And I find it to be despicable. And I will take a few phone calls. By the way, coming up here in a few minutes, Congressman Eric Swalwell is going to be joining us. We'll take a few comments, a few statements before that, a few phone calls, 702-221-7283. But before I do that, I want to play one more clip for you. And that is Alyssa Farah was on CNN yesterday. And as a woman and as a Republican who I do have respect for, she made some comments about Katie Britt making her speech in a kitchen. Here's what she had to say about that.
But I've got to say, the staging of this was bizarre to me. Women can be both wives and mothers and also stateswomen. So to put her in a kitchen, not in front of a podium or in the Senate chamber where she was elected after running a hard-fought race, I think fell very flat and was confusing to some women watching it. I think that was a missed opportunity. I think her focus on the border, on the economy, that's what Republicans wanted to hear. The substance of her remarks, great. The staging, just very, very bizarre.
Beyond bizarre. And I think a lot of women out there, Republicans, were insulted by it. All right, let's take some phone calls quickly. A few more minutes here. Congressman Eric Swalwell is going to be joining us. We'll get his reaction. Let's go to Loretta. Loretta is first up on Pushing the Limits. Hi, Loretta.
Hi. I'm calling to comment on the red hat. I believe we shouldn't be discussing it because that gives them some publicity that they really don't deserve. But I was shocked to see it. I immediately Googled and found on Wikipedia that the United States House of Representatives ban on head covering is an 1837 simple resolution.
You're right.
She should not be wearing a hat.
You're right. Listen, people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, they don't abide by rules and regulations put forth really by anybody. I mean, some of these Republicans want to bring guns into the House chambers so they can show them off. These people are despicable. It's one thing to disagree with Joe Biden on policy. It's another thing to use someone who was murdered to score political points. You'll never see Marjorie Taylor Greene wearing the shirt of an 8-year-old child that was gunned down in a school. It's a terrible, terrible tragedy when anybody is murdered, whether you're somebody that's documented or undocumented. It's horrible, but we should never use it to score political points. Now, some people might say, well, Brian, then why do Democrats use those that are gunned down in our schools as political points? They don't. What they do is they talk about gun control and they want to save lives. Now, if you want to make the argument that, oh, well, that's exactly what Marjorie Taylor Greene was doing, then why isn't she consistent on that? Why doesn't she talk about all the gun violence in this country? She'll only talk about somebody that was murdered if they were murdered by somebody that was undocumented. But if somebody was murdered, or for example, if a trash animal MAGA supporter walks into Texas El Paso Walmart and shoots a bunch of brown people, you won't hear a peep from Marjorie Taylor Greene. That's why I say it's it's despicable and it's disgusting to use this young woman's death, to score political points. And by the way, her parents were invited by a right-wing radical Republican, and they declined to go yesterday because they didn't want their child.
Great.
They didn't want their child to be used for political points.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This just showed her lack of decorum, which we knew she had already. And I agree that it shows the MAGA disregard or the lack of knowledge of how our government works, including the decorum of the House of Representatives.
Yep.
And they don't believe in rules. They don't believe in laws. They think they are above it, and they're dangerous.
They are, but they want to focus on Hunter Biden's penis, and they want to they want to talk about drag. They want to talk about drag queen reading and how drag queens are a bigger threat.
Oh my God! Don't get me started on that.
Yeah, I mean this is really the entire platform of the MAGA Republicans. They talk about drag queens and how being gay is so bad. Don't even say the word gay. They want to ban books. God forbid if there's a book that teaches children how to have safe sex, they want to ban books. This is their entire platform. And
this is what I say to the MAGA Republicans I speak to. Is fear the only thing that motivates you?
Yeah.
Do you have to have the bejesus scared out of you to do something decent?
Yeah.
This is crazy the way they use fear.
I agree with you, Loretta. I agree with you so much. All right. I appreciate your call, Loretta. We'll take some more phone calls a little bit later on the show. We're going to take a quick 90-second break. And when we come back, we are going to hear from Congressman Eric Swalwell. I've never interviewed him before. I've always looked forward to talking with him. And we want to get his reaction to the speech last night. I also probably will get into this with him a little bit because I thought he did a great job in questioning Hunter Biden during that time, clowning Republicans. I thought it was absolutely great. So Congressman Eric Swalwell will be joining us next in 90 seconds. You're going to want to stick around. We'll take a quick break. We'll be back right after this. You are listening to Pushing the Limits right here on KSHP.
Who would have thought there'd be so many kids playing ice hockey in the desert? Jake Helb's Hockey Foundation and the Las Vegas Ice Warriors, founded by Gina Yusufzai 8 years ago, made it possible for families who can't afford the equipment and fees. Donate today at www.hockeyforkids.org and help us continue making a difference. Join us in supporting Jake Helb's Hockey Foundation and the Las Vegas Ice Warriors, where every kid gets a shot at the starting line. Just a reminder, our website is www.hockeyforkids.org.
Voters want safe gun reform, ban military assault weapons, including AR-15s, have universal background checks, and red flag laws. I am Eva Chase, a candidate for Nevada State Assembly District 16, U.S. Air Force veteran, college graduate, progressive independent candidate, fully transitioned transgender woman, former lieutenant governor candidate for Nevada in 2022, where I received 7,212 votes in the Democratic primary. Follow me on Facebook, X, Instagram, TikTok. Donate to my campaign bot fund account and stay progressive.
Did you know that 99% of air conditioning issues start with airflow issues? Well, guess what? Pioneer Air has your back. They've been operating for 20 years in the industry within the Las Vegas area, large enough to handle all your air conditioning and heating needs, but small enough to know your first name. Pioneer Air focuses on preventative care, much like wellness checks for humans. They believe in wellness checks for air conditioning and heating systems to extend the life of the system you own. So what are you waiting for? Schedule your wellness check with Pioneer Air today. The number to call is 702-831-4840. Here's the best news. Mention this ad and you'll receive 10% off. Call Pioneer Air today. 702-831-4840. That number again, 702-831-4840.
My name is Hunter Kane, and I'm talking with you for a call to action for our veterans in Clark County. Who is Hunter Kane? Well, I'm a decorated combat veteran, veteran community leader, and candidate for Clark County Commission. Do you know no veteran has served on the commission in nearly 30 years, which is why our veteran homelessness, unemployment, and suicide rates are out of control. So here's the call to action. June 11th, vote veteran, vote Kane for Clark County. Let's rally behind someone who's been in the trenches, who knows the sacrifices, and who's committed to making a real difference. Join the campaign by searching Elect Hunter Kane on social media or go to www.electhunterkane.com.
All right, welcome back. It is Pushing the Limits on a Friday. Thank you so much for joining us. We're talking about, of course, Joe Biden's speech last night, reaction. We'll take some more phone calls coming up a little bit later on in the program. But one of those people that I certainly want to ask about his thoughts on the speech last night and many more topics as well is somebody certainly that I admire very much. I appreciate him holding Republicans to account. He does a great job in doing so. Of course, I'm talking about Congressman Eric Swalwell out of California, who's joining us right now on Pushing the Limits. Congressman, thank you so much for taking the opportunity to join us. How are you?
Hey, I'm great. Thank you, Brian. Thanks for all you're doing to just keep folks up to speed and educated.
Absolutely. I try. It doesn't always work, Congressman, but I try. What was your first reaction after the speech last night? What's the first thing, Congressman, that entered your mind after Joe Biden's speech?
This is why we elected Joe Biden, and this is why we need him for 4 more years. I mean, it was a fresh reminder that this guy is up for the fight, when our country is literally on the ropes, when democracy, hangs in the balance. He's up for the fight. And any bullshit about his age or whether he can do the job, I mean, that was absolutely put to bed last night. He took their heckling, he took their jabs, and he gave it right back. And he took us to, I would say, a higher place as to what this is all about: financial freedom, freedom of body, freedom to breathe clean air, freedom to go home after class and not be subjected to gun violence, freedom to vote and have it counted. I mean, he laid out all the freedoms and called upon us, to defend them.
I agree, Congressman. I thought it was a really important part of the speech last night when he talked about the border, right? And he talked about this bipartisan bill, guys like James Lankford, right, who helped put together, MAGA supporter, by the way. And, you have Lankford nodding his head in agreement with Joe Biden.
That is true.
Right. It's true. He's nodding his head. That's the moment I'm talking about. What a poignant moment for you guys and the Democrats and Joe Biden. And how embarrassing for Republicans that were sitting behind him while Lankford is shaking his head in agreement, right?
Yeah, Brian, these guys, they don't want the solution. They want the issue. And the reason they want the issue is because Donald Trump tells them the only way he can win is if he scares Americans and lies about, the border. And so they've walked away from solving, the problem because this is about Donald Trump. He doesn't care about anyone's security. He doesn't care about any immigrants, livelihood. He just cares about himself and the 91 felony charges he's facing. And if he doesn't have the border as an issue, he doesn't know what he's going to run on. And so he tells them, walk away from that, second most conservative, senator deal in James Lankford, because it's all about Donald Trump and it will always be all about Donald Trump.
I hate to have to bring up Marjorie Taylor Greene because it's probably not worth talking about. But what do you think Republicans would say, Congressman, if an Ocasio-Cortez, when Trump was president, walked into the chambers and wore a Joe Biden hat and was decked out the way that Marjorie Taylor Greene was decked out? Republicans would be going after her and it'd be leading on Sean Hannity's show tonight. Yet Marjorie Taylor Greene could just walk in there with that type of lack of decorum. What do you make of that? And have you talked to any Republicans that were disgusted by it at all?
She looked like a crazy lady. I mean, she looked like an absolute nut. She looked like somebody who believes in Jewish space lasers. If she's trying to disabuse us, of the notion that she believes in that, she didn't do much, with all the buttons and the T-shirt and the hat and the way that she acted. And you know what? Honestly, the president gave it right back. And again, if your argument is that, he's Sleepy Joe or he's, Dementia Joe, well, a guy who has those issues would not have been able to counterpunch while being attacked. And so they really, their whole argument against him collapsed last night. And they just showed how unserious they are.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. If you're just joining us, Congressman Eric Swalwell. Speaking of crazy, did you get a chance to watch Katie Britt's response, the Republican response? I do find it interesting, Congressman, that they wanted her speaking in a kitchen. I know there's a lot of Republicans that I spoke to last night, females, that were offended by the fact that she was speaking in a kitchen. What did you make of that? First of all, the logistics of it. And she sounded like a lunatic, in my opinion, a crazy actress over dramatizing things. What did you make of that whole situation?
Well, Brian, I think you're being a little too hard on Katie Britt, because as I listened to her, I made a donation to the SPCA because I thought it was a Sarah McLachlan, commercial. So maybe we're being too hard. We should check in with the SPCA to see, how well they did last night, because maybe there was a winner after all that came out of this. But no, when President Biden in his State of the Union said, you can call me old, but it really matters as to whether your ideas are old or not. They didn't help their case by, reinforcing, one of the oldest ideas, which is that a woman only belongs in the kitchen.
Congressman, I have to ask you this. I mean, how are you able to even have any type of intellectual conversations with some of these MAGA Republicans? Like, I know that there's a lot of Republicans that I'm sure you have a lot of respect for, as do I, the Mitt Romneys of the world, the Liz Cheneys. We might not always agree with them, but they're decent human beings, right? How do you even have a conversation, if you have to, with a Lauren Boebert or a Marjorie Taylor Greene or a Jim Jordan or a Matt Gaetz? As a congressman, you kind of have to try to work with them, but how do you do it? Because I know I couldn't.
Yeah, well, I think about my constituents first, right? I mean, they sent me there to get shit done for them and what's affecting them in their lives. And so sometimes, on issues that I'm not compromising my personal values or what they care about, I do have to work with Republicans. And so I chair the Precision Medicine Caucus. I chair the Rare Earth Caucus to counter China and make sure that we can derive, materials here in the U.S. But I also, having done this for 12 years, and having been a fan of the WWF as I was growing up, can recognize pro wrestling when I see it. And I call it 2/3, 1/3. About two-thirds of these folks on the MAGA side are absolutely pro wrestlers. I mean, they have a persona when they're in the quote unquote ring, when they're on camera, when they're in Congress, when they're in front of the voters. But privately, they are completely someone else. Either they want to like bro out with you, they want to be your friend, and they almost to a T, the two-third crowd, they're embarrassed of Donald Trump, and they hate, what he puts them in a position to have to do. Now, there's 1/3 of them, and I would put Marjorie Taylor Greene and Boebert and Jordan in this crowd. I mean, they are true MAGA believers. And I actually, to be honest, I can respect and deal with that easier than I can with somebody who knows better, but still carries out the persona because they think that's what they need to do to get elected. And the sooner those folks, the 2/3, speak up and speak out, the better off our country's going to be.
And isn't, Ted Cruz a perfect example, I think, of what you're talking
He's
about?
in the 2/3.
Right. He's
this
exactly.
guy, Brian, during the Senate impeachment trial, talked a bunch of trash about me the night before the trial on Fox News, sees me in the Senate bathroom after I had just presented, leans over and fist bumps me when we're both at the sink and says, "Hey, I want you to know that you're doing a really good job out there." I was stunned. I looked at him like he had 3 heads. And to him, it was like, well, the cameras aren't on. Like, we can just be normal people. I don't have to be, the MAGA warrior. And so he's in the 2/3. He knows better, but he does it because he thinks that's what the quote unquote fans, who I call constituents, want to see.
I mean, I don't know how anybody could have any moral compass when somebody goes after your spouse, your wife, and Donald Trump basically calls her ugly and says that members of your family were part of a Kennedy assassination, and then support a guy like that. What would you say to the Republicans out there today that maybe are good people, good family people, good fathers, good husbands, good mothers, yet they support a man who was just found liable for sexual battery? How do you explain that, Congressman?
Yeah, well, I would tell them, go to monster.com. Go look at the other jobs that are out there. They may think that this is the only job that they can get. And I think Monster is still like a job search platform. Go look at other jobs. I mean, these guys, I serve with a bunch of people who think this is the only job that they can get, which is crazy because I hope that I went to a place where we'd all given up other jobs that paid more and, were less stressful, so that we could do a public service. But these guys look at this as like the only job that they can get. And so if you look at it that way, then you can understand why they see themselves as so small and look at Donald Trump as so big, and they're afraid of just getting, squashed by him. So, that maybe, as I said, open up, a job listing and recognize that doing what's right may be more important than keeping your job. And you could probably get another one.
Congressman, it sounds to me like you're not going to be buying those $400 sneakers. I could be wrong on that. Those Trump sneakers. Yeah, that's what it sounds like to me. I don't know. Before I let you go, Congressman, I do want to ask you about your questioning of Hunter Biden, which I thought was so awesome. I talked about it on this show, this sham impeachment hearing we all know. Was that something that you planned on doing prior, where you were going to ask Hunter Biden about, do you operate a hotel, and allow foreign nationals to stay there? You're just basically asking question after question, which I thought was great, clowning the Republicans and the fact that, Jared Kushner receives $2.1 billion and all that stuff. Was that something that you knew you were going to do that, or was that just the day of that you decided to that line of questioning?
No, honestly, I sat through the whole deposition, which is something that James Comer, the guy who called this deposition, cannot say because he left. But as I was listening to the questions of the Republicans, it just occurred to me like, wait. Time out. I'm not going to sit here and see you ride your high horse about, allegations of, using the family's name to enrich yourself and look completely the other way to Donald Trump. And so rather than get into the weeds and accept their narrative, I thought, well, let's take a step back and really draw the contrast. And I think we have to do that from now until November. We have to draw the contrast every time they want to, take us down some crazy rabbit hole. We need the American people to say, look, you may not like the number 81, that's the president's age, but the number 91, the number of felony counts that Donald Trump is facing, is a hell of a lot higher and will cost us a lot more if allowed, to be the next president.
Final question. Will there be an investigation, and will Jared Kushner's businesses be subpoenaed based on this $2.1 billion that it received from the Saudis? Will this actually happen?
There better be. And I thought this is where Hunter was really effective. And this is why they didn't want a public hearing at first, because they didn't know what they were going to get. And Hunter, a number of times, in a very sincere way, would look at the Republicans and say, like, are you serious? Like, you're asking me about this and you don't have any problem with what Jared Kushner did? And at one point, Jamie Raskin jumped in and kind of echoed that. And a couple of Republicans said, no, we have a problem with that too. And if you look at the transcript, you'll see Raskin say, well, great, now we have you on the record that you have a problem with that too. I mean, it's unavoidable, to have Hunter sit there with your allegations and to have no care in the world about what Jared Kushner actually did.
Whether it's Marjorie Taylor Greene showing naked pictures of Hunter Biden in the House chambers, talking about drag queen reading, I have no idea what the Republican Party's platform is. I guess it's whatever Donald Trump tells them to do, right? It's ludicrous. Congressman, I really admire you. I appreciate your time. Will you ever run for president one day?
You know what? I ran for about the length of this interview in 2020. I had a lot of fun. I learned a lot, but I'm quite happy where I am. And I do think, you should go where you're going to be most effective. And there's a job to do this upcoming November. So
yeah, and you're doing a great job of it. We'd love to have you on again down the road, Congressman. It's a pleasure having you on. I appreciate your time. Keep up the great work, my friend, and hopefully we can talk to you again soon.
All right. Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Congressman. Appreciate it. That's Congressman Eric Swalwell, ladies and gentlemen. I have a lot of respect for him. He doesn't take any crap from the far-right MAGA Republicans. He fights back. I love that. I see that in me when I'm on the radio, and I see that in the congressman, and I really, really do appreciate him and what he's doing. And yes, I thought the questioning that he had to Hunter Biden was so great in clowning some of these Republicans and their hypocrisy. All right, here's what we're going to do. Should we take some phone calls? Do we have some people on hold? All right, why don't we do that? Reaction to Congressman Eric Swalwell, who just joined us on the line. Really enjoyed speaking with him. And we're talking, of course, about the State of the Union address of Joe Biden yesterday. There's a lot to talk about. And we're taking your phone calls at 702-221-7283. And again, that number, if you'd like to be a part of the conversation, 702-221-7283. All right, let's start off with Patrick. Patrick is first up on Pushing the Limits. Hello, Patrick.
Hello, Brian. Hey, just kind of breaking down, I guess we're seeing a lot of exit polls. A lot of people aren't too happy with the economy. And one of the reasons why, kind of breaking down some of these job numbers, you can go to the Bureau of Labor Statistics or the St. Louis Fed. They have charts there. In the past year, the U.S. has created over 900,000 part-time jobs and only 284,000 jobs. And since COVID,
okay, so Patrick, let's talk about that.
Workers have actually lost 2 million jobs.
Let's talk about that.
Jobs have gone to illegals and immigrants.
Okay, so let's talk about jobs. Patrick, are you aware? Because I'm going to give you some facts, not opinions.
I just broke down the numbers.
Okay, so Patrick, we're going to talk about jobs right now because you brought up jobs. Do you understand under the Biden administration, we've had the lowest unemployment rate we've had in 50 years? Do you also understand that?
Yes, and you know the reason for that? Brian?
It's not just COVID. I know
multiple jobs.
A lot of you MAGA people like to do is when I give you a stat like that, you like to say, oh, well, that's because of this and this, or it's because of Donald Trump. You want to give Donald Trump, credit for the COVID vaccine.
It has nothing to do with Donald Trump. I'm trying to talk about the numbers.
Okay,
and trying
so
to
let's give out the numbers.
Okay, sure. A lot of people aren't feeling.
Okay, good. So Patrick, okay, facts don't care about your feelings. Your idol, Ben Shapiro, told you that. So now we're going to go through some facts, and you could try to backtrack and give me your excuses, which I'll give you the opportunity to do because I find it very entertaining and laughable. We have the lowest unemployment rate we've had in over 50 years. The NASDAQ is skyrocketing. Manufacturing jobs skyrocketing. While inflation was in the double digits several years ago, it's now around 3%. Gas prices have been continuing to plummet. By the way, coming out of the economy that Donald Trump left him, which was in the crapper, by the way, and his response to COVID was an embarrassment. Now, I just gave you where the economy is at today. I don't care about your excuses of how people feel. Again, Ben Shapiro, no relation. Okay, facts don't care about your feelings. Unemployment is at the lowest it's been in 50 years. You can give me your explanation of cause and effect all you want to, because I'm sure you're a brilliant economist, right? I'm sure you really are. But those are the facts of where the economy is at. Those are the facts of where inflation is at. Those are the facts of where gas prices are at. Those are the facts of where manufacturing jobs are at and the unemployment rate. So what's your excuse for that, buddy?
These are Bureau of Labor Statistics numbers, Brian.
Did you hear what I just said? Refute anything I just said. Refute it. Go ahead.
Jobs
Try to.
are up, but they're all part-time jobs.
And where are you getting that information that the unemployment rate is so low, but they're all part-time jobs? Where did you get that brilliant statistic from? Alex Jones? Where'd you get that from?
The Bureau
Cite
of
it.
Labor Statistics.
So you're saying the Bureau? Okay, so let me ask you a question. Even if that is true, if somebody is working, whether it's part-time or full-time,
multiple jobs.
Excuse me.
Multiple jobs.
Excuse me. If they're working, and you're making the claim that people weren't working multiple jobs during the Trump administration, which, by the way, is a lie, and you have no idea what you're talking about. The bottom line is there are less people that are unemployed today than they were when Donald Trump left office. You cannot refute that. You could give me any excuse you want. I don't care. The facts don't care about your feelings, sir, and the unemployment rate is down. What would you say about inflation? Is that Donald Trump too? Or would you say maybe give Joe Biden a little bit of credit for the fact that inflation is now down to 3%. What about manufacturing jobs? Do you have any excuses for that as well, sir?
Well, inflation is tied to the M2 money supply. And if you look at the money supply and the rate at which it expand under the American Recovery Act, which he passed, the Inflation Reduction Act.
So nothing to do with Joe Biden.
He expanded more money into the system than any time in history. The rate of change.
So let me ask you another question then. Okay. Since you don't want to give Joe Biden any credit for that, since you don't want to give Joe Biden any credit for that, let me ask you another question. We compare, right. I know you think he created everything. I know he created everything, sir. The fact that you probably
look up the American Reinvestment Act and
right.
What that do
okay.
Inflation.
So by your standard, if he created everything, then he created the low unemployment rates and gas prices.
He created everything.
Oh, okay. So let's go with that for a moment. The countries that we compare ourselves to, there are many of the countries that we always compare ourselves to as far as the economy. We are ranked way up there as far as a better economy, lower inflation, lower gas prices. So that's not Joe Biden either, right? He didn't do anything to help us there. Was it Donald Trump? Who do you give credit for that? The fact that our economy is doing so much better than so many of the other countries that we compare ourselves to. Who would you give credit for that? I'm just wondering.
The American people has nothing to do with the government.
Gotcha. It's definitely not Biden, Patrick. So when things are going well and the economy is going well under Donald Trump, it's all Donald Trump. But when things are going even better under a Biden administration, it can't be Joe Biden. It's the American people. Patrick, you're a moron. 702-221-7283 is the number to call. Again, the number 702-221-7283. And when I bring up to these people, they'll say we didn't have any major problems under Donald Trump. Funny, I thought we had something called a global pandemic where over 1 million people died in this country, but that's not Donald Trump's fault at all, right? 702-221-7283 is the number to call. Let's go to Carl. Carl is next. What's going on, Carl?
Yeah, but yes, the call back today about the State of the Union speech. I think it was far more coherent than a lot of Trump speeches that I've heard, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. He was very coherent. I thought it was a great speech and it made a lot of sense.
Sure. I agree.
Yeah. And you look down you mentioned Marjorie Taylor Greene, that metal case with a MAGA hat on yelling incoherent things at Biden. I mean, people should see that she's mentally ill just by what she did there. And my final point would be about the GOP response. My wife was completely insulted. It makes women look useless unless they belong in the kitchen.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? It's even worse, Carl. It's even worse than that. I mean, she's speaking in front of a refrigerator that's a $10,000 refrigerator, and she's trying to resonate with the American people some that are living paycheck to paycheck that can't even afford paying their rent. And she, again, as Swalwell pointed out, and that was a hilarious moment. I mean, her acting skills, obviously she was not genuine. Anybody that can watch that video, that she was not genuine. She's reading a script and she's not showing any bit of empathy at all. She's just trying to score political points.
But what people have to take into consideration is Republicans want to think that women only belong in a kitchen.
Yeah.
They even shouldn't vote. They shouldn't they have no mind.
Well, Carl,
my wife was so insulted.
I understand why she was insulted. Carl, I insulted. Carl, I appreciate the call, but I will say this. I hope I'm not doing the same that Republicans did last night, but there's only one place that Donald Trump belongs, and that's in jail in an orange jumpsuit. So next time Donald Trump speaks, hopefully he'll be speaking behind bars. Thank you for the call, Carl. I appreciate you. 702-221-7283 is the number to call. Let's go to Roy, actually. Roy is next up on Pushing the Limits. What's up, Roy?
Hi, Brian. How are you today?
Good. What's on your mind, man?
Oh, boy. Okay, first, that was an incredible speech last night.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you listen to him talk and you listen to Trump talk and you just shake your head like, what the hell do these people see in this man? He's a moron. But I did want to bring up a couple of points. This woman from Alabama. Do you know that Alabama is one of the 5 states in this country who still use the $7.25 federal minimum wage?
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
You talk about people who can't afford some of the increases. And I mean, you go shopping, you know, there are people who are having a difficult time.
You want to talk
These
about
are
the
5
radicals on the Supreme Court in Alabama. It's unbelievable. And we have this woman who's trying to lecture us about rape. I think we all know how atrocious rape is. And yet these are the same people that support Orange Man, Cheeto Jesus, who was found liable of sexual assault. You cannot make this stuff up. They're lecturing us about rape and they support a rapist. You can't make it up, Roy. You just can't. Did we lose Roy? 702.
No, I'm
okay.
here.
Go ahead, Roy. Yep.
Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi, South Carolina, and Tennessee, those 5 states have no minimum wage. They go by the federal minimum wage.
Right.
And these are the people, these are the red states that support the Republican Party. They can't, and you wonder why some of these people can't afford to go shopping and do their things. $7.25 an hour hasn't been raised in 20 some odd years.
Yeah, no, you're right. Listen, Roy, you're 100% right. I thought Joe Biden did just fine last night. I'm in agreement with you.
He did great.
And
he also brought up, go ahead.
And I was just going to say, go ahead, Roy.
He brought up the tax situation. Yeah. You know, I've called in and railed about taxes for many a time.
Yeah.
He made a statement that the 100 billionaires in this country pay an overall tax rate of 8.2%.
You're right, Roy. I got to ask you. I got to ask you an important.
Unbelievable.
It is unbelievable. I'm going to let Roy make the decision here. I'm going to let one person make this very. Roy, do I take Julie's call today? Yes or no? I'm going to do whatever you tell me to do.
No.
Okay. Hang up on Julie. We're not taking her call. Roy, I appreciate you. Thank you very much.
You need a day off.
I do.
Can I say one other thing?
Sure.
Actually, 2 other things.
Go ahead.
It was interesting that Alito and Thomas were not there last night.
Yes, I do find that interesting as well. You're right. And you know who was there? The American people. You know who was there? Middle America, that some who still might be on the fence, and they saw a man who was up for another 4 years. They saw a man with decency, a man with empathy, and a man who was ready to finish the job. While Orange Turd was truth socialing on the crapper last night, making fun of the fact that Joe Biden had lipstick on his cheek. Meanwhile, Donald Trump is the guy that had lipstick on his private areas right after Melania had a baby. Thank you for the call, Roy. I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Can I say one more thing?
Quickly.
Can I
Go
give
ahead.
you an example of something?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
One of the things that I rail about is our tax system, which is grossly unfair.
Yeah.
And no one ever brings this up because most people are not aware of it. When somebody dies, the people who inherit their assets get what's called a stepped-up basis. So you take these millionaires and billionaires, and if a millionaire, a multimillionaire at age 50 has $100 million worth of stock, he doesn't sell it. It's unrecognized gain.
Right.
By the time he's 80 years old, at a 7% return, that's worth about $800 million.
Right.
And when he dies and his kids or whoever inherit that $800 million, do you know how much capital gains tax they pay?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, it's
zero.
Yeah. It's mesmerizing. It's mesmerizing that they don't have to pay anything. And Roy, I appreciate your phone call. It's a really good point. Speaking of which, Donald Trump was only able to put up $94 million in one of his civil cases. I thought he was a billionaire. I find that very interesting as well. Thank you, Roy. One phone line open, folks, 702-221-7283. Let's go to Arlene. Arlene is next up on Pushing the Limits. Hi, Arlene.
Well, hi. I'm back from yesterday. I'm the Robert F. Kennedy lady.
Oh, I have some news for you.
Okay.
I just received a
I'm
message.
ready.
I just received a message from somebody in Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s camp. He has agreed to do this show. I don't know exactly.
Oh.
I don't know exactly when the day will be. Hopefully sooner than later. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has agreed to do PTL. And as anybody knows, I'm not a big Robert F. Kennedy Jr. fan, and I'm going to challenge him on a lot of his conspiracy theories. I thought I would just tell that to the listeners. Go ahead.
Well, thank you. I hope that I'm available that day. So about yesterday, I did watch. I try never to miss. I did watch. And I actually felt that President Biden was a little more of a bully than he normally is, in a good way.
Sure.
In a good way. I mean, because we normally, see the guy speak softly, kind of speak softly, carry a big stick attitude.
I don't even know if he was a bully as much as I thought he was pretty strong on his convictions and calling out the MAGA morons out there, even though he didn't use those terms that I use. But I thought he did a good job.
Yeah, and I don't mean bully in a mean way.
Yeah.
But for him, But I think he hit all of the points. Of course, again, I live in California.
Sure.
And we have a lot of DACA recipients, and they're still sitting on the fence.
Yep.
And Senator Padilla took a DACA young lady who is now a doctor.
Let me ask you. I want to ask you something quickly, if I may. What do you think was the most important part of his, or the most poignant part in his speech last night?
I actually think it was talking about the border, because in that we need reform. We need reform at the border, and we need gun reform.
Yes, I agree.
And those are really big. Now, I walk around California. Sure. I'm not worried. I am worried I'm going to get shot from some crazy person.
If you're in California, please do me a favor and keep voting for Eric Swalwell, because I love that guy. I really do.
He's not in my district.
Okay.
I am an Alex Padilla, and
good.
I like Katie Porter, but she didn't win. But Adam Schiff is really close in terms of
listen, I think Adam Schiff has done a good job as well. I got to get to some other callers, but it is great to hear from you. And you have a wonderful weekend. Okay. Thank you for the phone call.
You as well.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
You too.
Bye-bye.
702-221-7283 is the number to call. Why don't we go to Diane? Diane is next up on Pushing Limits. Hi, Diane.
Hi, how are you?
Good. What's on your
mind?
mind?
I'm a proud Democrat.
Good for you.
Proud Democrat.
So you won't be buying the Donald Trump sneakers either. That's too bad.
No way, Jose.
Oh, that's too bad.
No, there's my late husband was a news hound.
Oh.
I've had to listen to Donald Trump on the news for over 40 years, and I'm fed up with hearing it. Okay.
Yeah. Well,
really fed up.
I hear you.
What I see now.
Can I push? Can I just add one thing, and then I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'll let you finish.
Yeah.
I understand where you're coming from. However, when people say to me, why do you talk about Donald Trump so much? If he wasn't running for office again, I wouldn't. The problem is, and I think you'll agree with me, he is the front runner and the face of the Republican Party who's running for president. So I have to. But I also understand I also understand where you're coming from. It gets tiresome after a while. I get it. But the reality of the situation is it's Donald Trump versus Joe Biden. And as much as you dislike Donald Trump, I would imagine probably as much as I do and Melania Trump does, we have to make sure that he doesn't get back into office. And I need to call out, we as a society need to call out his despicable behavior, the things he says, and I would hope that he will probably be a convicted felon, and we need to call it out.
I hope so.
Yes. Yes.
But what worries me about the MAGA cult, and that's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Jim Jones.
Yeah.
Years ago, he had all these people believing him. There was a cult.
Mm-hmm.
I have to wonder if these people, if Trump said to them, I want you to drink this poison because I did not win, would they do it?
Oh, of course they would. I mean, he talked about injecting yourself with disinfectant, and a couple people died because he said that.
Yeah.
Let me be very clear. Let me be very clear on this. Not every MAGA supporter is like this, but there's a large portion that are. These are uneducated white people, many of whom who live in the middle of the country, who are cultists. And while they're on they're on government programs that, by the way, many Democrats voted in to help poor people. They use those government programs and the money they get to buy Donald Trump sneakers and Donald Trump flags and that type of stuff. I mean, they're some of the dumbest people that this country has to offer. And it's the one compliment I give Donald Trump for the most part, okay, which is he exposed how stupid some people are in this country. And, there's nothing we can do about that. They're brainwashed, they're uneducated, and they're far gone.
Well, I'm a Biden. Biden's got my vote. He had it last time. Hillary should have been president before him. But all I can do, I live in a red state. And some of these people are crazy here.
Well,
I
would say a lot of them probably are crazy. As a woman, what do you think about putting their Republican spokesperson talking head yesterday? I'm talking about Katie Britt in a kitchen.
That was ridiculous.
I mean,
that was ridiculous.
Who made that decision? Donald Trump? I mean, can you imagine?
I couldn't watch the whole thing. I watched the entire State of the Union, and I thought Biden was awesome. And I started watching her, and I thought, gosh, what an idiot.
Tom Arnold, my friend Tom Arnold, the actor, said it best earlier today. I texted him. He said, this woman couldn't even get a small role in one of my terrible movies. That's how bad of an actress she is. I thought that was, I died laughing. I coughed while eating my lunch. You sound like a lovely lady. You keep fighting out there. I'm sorry. You're in that red state, but you keep fighting and you keep calling in. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. You take care. 702-221-7283. Let's go to Lauren, who's next up on Pushing the Limits. Hi, Lauren.
Hi, Brian. How you doing?
I'm doing good, Lauren. What's on your mind today?
Well, I was curious. I noticed the squad yesterday had their signs in there when the president was speaking. What did you think about that?
I've been, and by the way, it was two of them, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. I believe
it was three of them.
Okay,
but,
I saw Tlaib and I saw Bush. There might have been a third. I didn't see that. So I've been very, very open and honest about Tlaib and Bush particular. And my opinion has not swayed and my opinion has not changed. I think those two ladies in particular are an embarrassment to the Democrats and they are an embarrassment to this country. Why? Well, those are the two ladies that voted on a bill, the only two, Republicans and Democrats all voted against anybody from Hamas coming into this country. They were the only two that said that that would be okay. It is all right to disagree with the Israeli government. It is all right to have different policy disagreements with Joe Biden. But I haven't heard to this day Rashida Tlaib call out specifically Hamas. And I believe those two women, in my personal opinion, I disagree with them tremendously. And I have I really have a hard, here's the problem with the ceasefire. I hope that there is an agreement reached. I really do. But if you look at Hamas, and I think you'll agree with me on this, since they've been around, they're a terrorist group that has been around since the mid-'80s. They have broken dozens of ceasefire agreements. It's just like Vladimir Putin. When the Vivek Ramaswamy say we should negotiate with Vladimir Putin, we should sit at the table with him. Let's give him parts of Ukraine, which is absurd. These people don't know how to negotiate because they have no good faith. Hamas is not, if you agree on a ceasefire, maybe it'll stop for a week. You think they're just going to stop? They don't think Israel should exist. They want genocide. They want to get rid of all the Israeli people.
Well, I agree with you on that. But the other congresswoman was originally from Somalia?
You're talking about Ilhan Omar, is that right?
Right. She also was sitting there with a sign.
And I'm not going to go as far as to say Ilhan Omar is an anti-Semite, but I will say this about her. She's said some ignorant things in the past and she's apologized for them. I'm not a huge fan of hers, just like I'm not a fan of Rashida Tlaib or Bush either.
Well, you do know that people from that area are Semitic people.
So here's what I don't. So here's what I don't like to do, and I never will do that, and I won't do this with Trump supporters either. I don't like to generalize and say a group of people are this way. I don't talk like that. Everybody is different. There are anti-Semitic people across the world that live in all sorts of different countries. So I'm not going to take an entire group of people and say that they're all anti-Semitic because it's just not true.
No, that's not what I was saying. What I was saying is even the Palestinians and people in the Middle East, are Semitic people, not just the Jews.
There is a portion of people in the Middle East that are absolutely anti-Semitic. They believe that Israel.
No, I'm not. Okay, I'm not saying it. I'm not talking about anybody being anti-Semitic. What I'm saying is that whole region is Semitic people. If you're a Palestinian, you're a Semitic person.
Yes,
if you're
I get what
if you're
you're
an
saying.
Arab, you're a Semitic person.
They are raised as I hear what you're saying. They are raised a certain way to hate a certain group of people, which I think is wrong, and I hate it. Just like there are,
I agree.
Just like there are people in this country, sadly so, that are raised to hate groups of people, colors of skin, which is wrong as well. So I think it's important to call those people out. As far as Israel, here's what I can tell you. There are millions of Muslim people, millions of people living in Israel. If the Israelis hated Muslims as much as some people would lead you to believe, then guess what? Those people wouldn't be allowed to live there. There are millions of Muslims living free in Israel right now. So Israel government's not perfect. I don't always defend them. I'm not a Benjamin Netanyahu fan. Okay. And I know Joe Biden isn't either, but I thought he was very poignant on the issue, which is Hamas started this. They're the terrorist group. Israel has a right to defend themselves, but they also have responsibility for lowering, innocent people and casualties. Do you agree?
Oh, I definitely agree.
Good.
I mean, I was over during the Yom Kippur War.
Sure.
In that theater.
Right.
So
I got you.
I mean, I know what took place at that time.
Yes.
I know that the Jewish shopkeepers, they left the keys in their shops. So when the Palestinians went in there, or whoever went in there, they would have use of that material, use of those shops,
right.
And they were destroyed.
But
because they were owned by the Jews, which made no sense to me.
I understand, Lauren. I understand. All I'm saying is simply put is this: there is a portion of the Republican Party today, and sadly a large portion. Liz Cheney said it best: the Putin wing of the Republican Party that want Russia to win this war, and they are pro Vladimir Putin. That can't happen.
I'll be very honest with you. Ukraine is not going to win this war.
If we don't provide them with more artillery, then I would probably agree with you.
It doesn't matter if we provide them with it, because we've already broken the law by giving them those cluster bombs. We broke international law as a country.
Okay, well, I respectfully disagree with you there. I don't think we.
Well, you can check that out.
Listen,
I mean, I'm speaking from fact. I'm not just talking off the top of my head.
Well, let me be very clear then, if that's the case. Vladimir Putin and the Kremlin soldiers invaded that country, raped women and children, beheaded babies, put babies in ovens. If we broke a law, as you say, with artillery that we sent over to Ukraine, I'm not going to sit here and criticize our government for doing so. This is a terrorist organization. They, just like Hamas, they invaded Ukraine. And I want Ukraine to win this war. And I disagree with you. I think Ukraine is going to win so long as we continue to help them. 702-221-7283. Thank you for the call, by the way, Lauren. I appreciate it. Let's go to Joseph. Joseph is next. Hello, Joseph.
Yeah. Hey, Brian. Hearing that speech from Joe Biden, I still have faith in Joe Biden, and I still have hope for him, period. It makes me feel this is way better than Marjorie Taylor Greene, and it's way better than Trump's, and it's even way better than that Republican who was a Holocaust denier and a election denier. I think his last name was Robinson, was it?
Well, I can tell you that a lot of people in the House chambers yesterday on the right, maybe not a lot, but certainly the extreme MAGA supporters out there are very dangerous to this country. I don't always agree with Democrats, but I can tell you that it was a nice moment of solidarity when you had many of the women and some men that are Democrats wearing white in solidarity about a woman and choosing what a woman can do with her own body. I thought that was very nice. And you had there's a portion of the Republican base, the Klan base, as I would call them, that are anti-black, anti-immigration. They'll claim to you, we want everybody in this country, but we just want them to come in legally. No, you don't. You want this country to continue to look like you, and that is white. There is a portion of the Republican base that want this country to remain white, and they are afraid that the country is starting not to look like them. And they'll use the excuse, oh, Biden has the borders wide open. He's only doing this so he can get votes and pander votes. That's also not true, because if you are undocumented, you cannot vote in the presidential election. They are lies being put forth by the right. And if they actually really did care about the border, then they would have passed this bill, and they didn't do it because they are hypocrites.
And speaking of Marjorie Taylor Greene, the way she's wearing that orange, I bet that's her new fashion statement. She'll probably wear that when she goes to prison.
Maybe she wants a date with Donald Trump behind bars, and I don't know. Maybe that's possible. Maybe she can get the transgender surgery, and then she could be in the same cell as Donald Trump. I appreciate the call, Joseph. Thank you so much. He does look great in orange.
You got it.
All right, 702-221-7283. Let's go to Tammy. Tammy is next up on Pushing the Limits. What's up, Tammy?
Hey, I just wanted to take exception to your statement that the dumbest people live in the middle of the United States.
No. I didn't say the dumb. So I have to emphasize that the MAGA Republicans, I'm not saying every person in middle America is dumb. I would never make that statement. I said a lot of the MAGA supporters that seem to be uneducated, his base, seem to be in the middle of the country. Certainly there are plenty of intelligent people in the middle of the country. I'm specifically talking about the MAGA supporters.
Oh, I'm with you. They're uneducated, and they are. You're not interrupting me like you do everybody else.
I interrupt. Sometimes I like to move along a conversation, but I don't always interrupt.
Well,
people.
I want to say that I really enjoyed Biden's speech last night.
Yeah.
I think he showed America that he is still in the game and he knows what he's talking about. And I think we need to really, God, Donald Trump is just so, I can't, there's not a word for him, is there?
Despicable, Cheeto Jesus. I don't know. There's plenty of words.
Yes.
Rapist. I mean, there's a lot of words we could probably use. Yeah.
I just don't, if Joe Biden had gotten on a bus with a reporter and said he grabbed women's pussies.
Yes. Watch the language.
Joe
Go ahead.
Biden had been,
yeah, go ahead.
If Joe Biden had been convicted of sexual assault,
sure.
If Joe Biden had bankrupted several companies that were building construction for him, if Joe Biden called Mexicans rapists and thieves, if anyone, if a high school coach, if your high school football coach got on a bus and said, let's grab women by the
you know what?
P-word,
right.
Then
they'd be fired. They'd lose their job. No.
Yeah.
But here's the excuse. But here's the excuse from the MAGAs out there, including Donald Trump. It's just locker room talk. They always have excuses.
Oh, well, it's not.
Yeah. You know, Donald Trump could in a coronavirus press conference talk about injecting yourself with disinfectant. And the Republicans will say, you're taking it out of context. He was just joking. Donald Trump could attack John McCain as a POW and say, you don't respect him because, he didn't respect him because he was captured. And then the excuse of, look at John McCain and his policies. That's what Donald Trump was talking about.
There you go.
They always seem to have an excuse for the despicable conduct of Donald Trump. And
the funny thing is, if you look back to the day after January 6th, how all of the Republicans were ready. They were decrying. They were so ready to throw that man under the bus as he should have been.
No, you're right.
And then, like 2 days later, they're all like, "Oh, let's go to Mar-a-Lago."
Well, McCarthy's a perfect example of that. I mean, Donald Trump again. Listen, there's a portion of the MAGA Republicans out there where Donald Trump actually told the truth, and he said, I can shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and they would still support me. That is absolutely and positively the case. And it's why the Republican Party has people like the Kyle Rittenhouses of the world and the McCloskeys taking speaking engagements. I appreciate your call. Thank you so much. You have a great weekend. Okay.
You too.
All right. You take care. She mentioned the word coach, by the way. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a quick break and we'll take more phone calls on the other side. We have a former NBA coach joining us in studio next, who also, by the way, is very, very outspoken when it comes to social issues. He played in the NBA for 11 years, actually 12 years. He'll be mad at me if I say 11. His name is Paul McKeskey, and he wants to give his reaction to the Joe Biden's speech last night, and we'll continue to take some more phone calls on the other side. Paul McKeskey is going to be joining us in studio next. We'll take your phone calls, 702-221-7283. Your reaction to my interview with Congressman Eric Swalwell as well, and the speech last night, what you liked and even what you didn't like. 702-221-7283. And again, that number, 702-221-7283. You could also follow me on my social media platforms as well, on YouTube at PTL Radio Show. If you'd like to subscribe to my personal YouTube page, it's free, at PTL Radio Show. You can also subscribe on the Occupy Democrats page. It's only $5 a month. It's a cup of coffee. But my personal YouTube page, again, is at PTL Radio Show. We will continue the conversation. What did you think of the speech last night? Positives, negatives. Paul McKeskey is going to be joining us in studio, and we'll take more of your phone calls at 702-221-7283. Be back in 90 seconds. You're listening to Pushing the Limits.
My name is Hunter Kane, and I'm talking with you for a call to action for our veterans in Clark County. Who is Hunter Kane? Well, I'm a decorated combat veteran community leader, and candidate for Clark County Commission. You know, no veteran has served on the commission in nearly 30 years, which is why our veteran homelessness, unemployment, and suicide rates are out of control. So here's the call to action. June 11th, vote veteran, vote Kane for Clark County. Let's rally behind someone who's been in the trenches, who knows the sacrifices, and who's committed to making a real difference. Join the campaign by searching Elect Hunter Kane on social media or go to www.electhunterkane.com.
Did you know that 99% of air conditioning issues start with airflow issues? Well, guess what? Pioneer Air has your back. They've been operating for 20 years in the industry within the Las Vegas area, large enough to handle all your air conditioning and heating needs, but small enough to know your first name. Pioneer Air focuses on preventative care, much like wellness checks for humans. They believe in wellness checks for air conditioning and heating systems to extend the life of the system you own. So what are you waiting for? Schedule your wellness check with Pioneer Air today. The number to call is 702-831-4840. Here's the best news. Mention this ad and you'll receive 10% off. Call Pioneer Air today. 702-831-4840. That number again, 702-831-4840.
Buying or selling a home is a huge life event that requires guidance from an expert in the industry and community. My name is Blake Wynn. You may recognize my name as my grandfather was the best governor the state of Nevada has ever had. Growing up in Las Vegas, I've come to know this community intricately. Now, I am raising a family here as well. So I understand all the issues impacting our home and quality of life. As the top realtor for the #1 real estate team at Keller Williams, you can have confidence in my experience, knowledge, and track record. When it comes to buying, selling, or investing in real estate, choose a name you can trust and someone who understands the community you call home. Call Blake Wynn today and experience the difference of a trusted expert. 702-540-3311.
Welcome back. It is Pushing the Limits on a Friday. Thank you so much for joining us. A very, very busy news day on a Friday. Of course, we had the State of the Union address yesterday. yesterday, we had Congressman Eric Swalwell, who joined us last hour. Interesting comments from him. And then this crazy lunatic lady named Britt. I guess they call her a rising star. I guess a rising star within the Republican Party. I don't know. Joining us in the studio to talk about this, a good friend of mine, somebody who knows a thing or two about coaching. He's already coached in the NBA for decades, and he played in the NBA for 12 years. Always outspoken when it comes to social issues.
Yeah,
It was really, what do you think of the fact that Katie Britt, am I overemphasizing this? There's a lot of women out there that were offended.
I mean, when I saw it, and stuck out to me like right away. The only thing missing was pearls around it, and an apron. I mean, it's like, what producer or why would you do that? What put her behind a desk?
Podium.
Podium
Yeah.
or a flag. Or, not in the kitchen. I mean, that wasn't very difficult.
No, it wasn't, and I thought it was embarrassing. I thought the performance. Listen, anybody with a brain can tell when someone's being genuine and when they're not. That was forced rage, forced anger. They obviously told us, "We want real grit. We want real emotion out of you." Well, guess what? If you have real grit and you have real emotion, that comes out anyway. I don't act when I'm on the radio. When I get pissed off at somebody, I get pissed off. When I'm angry at something Donald Trump says, I get angry. Nobody says, Brian, I want more emotion.
I've spoken in front of 5,000, 6,000 people. I've spoken in front of football teams, and basketball teams, and groups. And when I do my best, and when I don't understand, when I come from the heart and the emotion, and
Right.
just tell you what I'm trying to say. When I really mess up and I don't feel, and it comes across as not genuine, is when I'm reading a script, not very well, by the way, and then it just afterwards I feel like, well, I said the numbers and the points of emphasis I wanted to do, but it didn't come across like I wanted to because it wasn't coming from the heart, and that's what she looked like. She was doing about as good a job as Trump does reading a prompter, and it just didn't come across very well.
No, it didn't come across well at all. I think Joe Biden did what he needed to do last night. He showed that as far as the cognitive difficulties, and he's not up for the job, which is what these right-wing Republican talking points are. You'll hear it all day today on Sean Hannity and Mark Levin and Laura Ingraham. Oh, listen to the way he fumbled his words. And, meanwhile, you have the orange turd on Truth Social criticizing Joe Biden for having lipstick on his cheek. I mean, you can't make this stuff up.
I mean, if you just watch some of Trump's speeches where, Venezuela, he can't even say words. I mean, and you know what? I'm going to be truthful too. When I watched him, Biden last night, I was please get through this smoothly and everything. And he fumbled words, and we all do, right? Especially when you're trying to get specific numbers of, facts. And that's what happens when you do that, is you kind of fumble with your words a little bit.
Right.
But you could tell it was coming from the heart,
Yes,
and that his heart
yes.
was in the right place.
I am so glad, Mo, you bring that up. That's such an important point. If somebody mumbles and bumbles their words a little bit or has a gaffe, that's not that important to me. Listen, Donald Trump said you need ID to buy bread, but that's not my biggest issue with him. Donald Trump, confused Nancy Pelosi with Nikki Haley. That's not my biggest issue. The only reason why I ever bring that up is because the Republicans bring up Joe Biden
Or
in his
he thinks
Yeah.
Obama's still the president.
Exactly. But I don't like to talk about stuff like that because they're both old and we all have gaffes and we make mistakes. What you just talked about is Joe Biden. You can't tell me this was fake. Joe Biden spoke from the heart. It's one of his best qualities. I spoke to a staunch Republican on the phone yesterday. I won't say who, but a very staunch Republican and a well-known Republican. And this person told me on the phone last night that, you know what? I'll say this about Joe Biden. He sounded genuine. When have you ever heard Donald Trump genuine in his entire life? Unless he's talking about himself, and that's not even genuine either.
Well,
That's just him being, insecure.
When he's trying to sell his tennis shoes or he's trying to sell a bobblehead or whatever, But
Can I ask you really quickly, when you're a basketball coach, when you were playing, if you saw somebody stroll into the gym, if you were an NBA coach today, you saw somebody stroll into the gym in these Donald Trump sneakers, what would you say?
I feel sorry for your feet, and they're ugly as hell. But if I was a player, 6'3", 6'2", whatever, and I'm going into this combine to try to get a job in whatever league I'm trying to get, not the NBA, I'm not talking about that, or the G League. Coaches like us go in the gym and we see 80 guys in the gym, and we see a guy wearing green shoes or a guy, and we kind of put that down. I write it down on my little sheet. The guy in green shoes can't play or can play.
Right.
If he came in with shoes like that, you would just question, what do you, because they're not going to be good for your feet.
How do you think some of the players you played with, that I would imagine some of them certainly have dealt with social injustices in their life. I'm sure they were very active in some of them talking about it. How do you think they would feel if they had like a guy, I don't know, there's some UFC fighters that are obviously big Trump supporters, but if a guy played on the other team and they're this huge Donald Trump supporter wearing MAGA socks and MAGA sneakers, how do you think they would react to that?
I think they would probably just laugh and like, what are you doing? I mean, it was just so silly. It's so ridiculous, but going back to the speech last night, did he fumble and bumble? Sure, but did he talk from the heart? Yes. Did he hit points that were important? Did he turn on the hecklers, when they wanted him to say the name of the young lady that was killed recently by someone that came in the country not legally? But then he, instead of running away from it, he got the pin that they were wearing, showed it to everybody, said her name, and then looked at her parents that were up in the stand.
No, they weren't there actually yesterday.
But in the camera, and apologized and said, I know how you feel. I'm so sorry because I've been through that because my sons were killed.
Exactly.
I mean, how can you not have...
Here's a tidbit, and you're right. I mean, a horrible tragedy. Her parents chose not to be there. A Republican, MAGA Republican, invited them. And you know what? I have so much respect for her parents. They're still mourning, number one.
Of
and they don't want her daughter to be used to score political points. It is a tragedy, but I find it very interesting that it with somebody that is in this country illegally and someone is murdered or killed, which is horrible. These MAGA Republicans like Marjorie Taylor Greene will be the first one to be outspoken about it. But if our kids are mowed down in our schools and shot by an 18-year-old legal citizen of this country.
With an AR.
Yeah, with an AR. Not only do they make it easier for bad people to get their hands on guns, but all I hear from them is thoughts and prayers. So I find that to be very interesting, and we all know why. They don't care about this young girl. The Marjorie Taylor Greenes of the world I'm talking about, they only want to score political points.
Well, just like they don't really care about the border, or they would pass the bipartisan bill that obviously even the Republicans they put on camera yesterday that had involved that were shaking their head like, yes.
Right.
And like we talked about this before, like, well, it's not perfect. Mm-hmm. Well, if I was President Biden, I would have brought up that I've been in these rooms and there is not one bill I've ever seen that's perfect, but it's better than nothing.
Sure.
And it gets us in. It's like I talked about, it's like if you see someone injured or bleeding on the street, instead of putting a tourniquet on them, you say, well, that doesn't fix everything, so we're not going to put a tourniquet on you. We're going to go take you to the hospital so you can have surgery. Well, by the time you get to the hospital, you'll probably be dead.
I agree.
So it just makes no sense. I wish he would have hit that a little harder, and look at him and say, listen, we have a bill that almost everybody agrees on, and you won't pass it because we have an emergency at the border, but evidently you're going to wait a whole year because it's a political statement. That's ridiculous.
To me, it was the most poignant part of the speech yesterday, or moment. It is the moment when Joe Biden is talking about this immigration bill, and you have one of the biggest MAGA Republicans sitting there. His name is James Lankford. Now, I don't agree with James Lankford on a lot of issues. However, I will give him credit because he went to the bargaining table and he negotiated with Democrats, and he was a big part of this bill. And he's been very outspoken about the bill on how, while it's not perfect, it will address the border and it will help. He's sitting there. And while Joe Biden is talking about how so many of the MAGA Republicans, like the idiot that was sitting behind him and Mike Johnson making all this stupid faces, talking about how Johnson said when the bill hits his desk, it's dead on arrival. And then you have James Lankford when Joe Biden's talking about how it would address the border and help. And Lankford is shaking his head yes. And he says, that's true. That's true. It says all you need to know about where the Democrat Party is right now and where the Republican Party is right now. Republicans will complain about something. And then when Democrats want to address it and work with Republicans, the MAGA Republicans won't pass the bill. Why? Because Donald Trump told them not to pass the bill, because they are the party of Donald Trump and they don't care about the United States of America. Now, you could make the case, and it's a fair argument. Geez, I wish Joe Biden would have done this a couple of years ago. Okay, fine. But he's doing it now, and even if he tried to do it 2 years ago, Donald Trump would have pulled the same crap, and the MAGA Republicans would have pulled the same crap. This is a bill that would help. And it's amazing to me, and to me, that was the most important part of the speech, because it shows the difference between both parties today.
Yeah, and the other part was when he addressed, no disrespect, but the
Supreme Court.
The Supreme Court,
Yeah.
and I didn't know this till this morning, but I think 2 or 3 of the worst, they weren't even there. Well, I don't understand how you can be in the Supreme Court and not be there. Yeah, I kind of wish he would have looked at all those generals over on the side too and said, listen, I respect you. You give your life for this country.
Right.
And you and your family have suffered. I would never, ever say anything negative about someone that's sacrificing for our country like my predecessor did.
Right.
And, unfortunately, if he does get in office, you all probably be out of jobs because he's just going to put his people in there.
Mo, I said this yesterday. And by the way, we're going to take some phone calls, 702-221-7283. And again, if you'd like to be a part of the conversation, we will open up the phone lines again because I know I'm getting messages from people that want to get through. 702-221-7283. Before we get calls, Mo, I'll take it a step further. What I said yesterday, and this is something that I would have liked to have heard from Joe Biden, and I thought he did a good job, but I would have liked to have heard him talk about Nikki Haley. And here's what I would have liked Joe Biden to say, Mo, and you could tell me whether you agree or not.
I know exactly what you're
going
to say.
I would say, listen, Nikki, we don't always agree, and that's okay. That's what makes America great. I have so much respect for your family, particularly your husband, who has risked his life for this country, just like my good friend John McCain. I would never say the things about you and about your husband that my predecessor has said. I would never talk to you like that and disrespect you like that. Now, I know we disagree on some things, and I'm not asking you to endorse me, and I don't expect you to do that. But my office is open to you because I think you're a nice, educated lady that can help this country. Let's work together. He would have got a standing ovation from certainly all the Democrats, and I bet some of the Republicans as well. And I wish he put that in the speech because he needs to win those Republicans.
Yeah, I agree. And that would have been a really big part of the whole thing. And, he would have hit home on the part that irks me about Trump is how disrespectful he is to everybody and just says it out loud. And you had someone on the show, I think last week, or maybe it was earlier this week. That's a respected guy, and I think he's running, or I don't know what his name is. But when you confronted him on, well, Trump said this and that about military. The guy was in the military.
Alan Bigelow.
Yeah. So,
Yep.
And he said this, called military losers and whatever.
Suckers, yeah.
And what he said was, well, he's just kidding, and he's using that as a shock value so people will listen to him. That is so ridiculous. That's like me coming
horrible
in.
Excuse.
That's like me coming in here and being on your show and saying, listen, all DJs and radio people hate Jews and hate blacks, and they want chaos. And I just said that for the shock value, and now listen to what I say.
You know what it's
no
like,
sense.
Mo? It doesn't, Mo, and I'm with you, and that's a good point. It's like when evangelicals out there say that being gay is a sin and gay people shouldn't be allowed to marry one another, and when they make statements like that and then you question them on their pathetic and disgusting response to it, they'll use their religion as an excuse for their bigotry. That's what these people are doing. They're saying that, well, yeah, Trump said those things and I don't agree with it, but it's just for shock value.
That makes no sense.
Not only does it make no sense, but it shows that they don't have a moral compass. You have to stand up and say, it's wrong. Yes, I don't like Joe Biden's policies. here's what I like about Trump, but he's wrong for doing that, and it's disgusting.
Here,
Is it so hard to say that?
I'm going to go to a movie theater, right? And there's 100 people there. I want them to listen to what I have to say. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to yell fire, and there's a active shooter, and then I'll get their attention, and then I can talk to them.
Yeah, shock
value. It makes
value.
no sense.
It makes no sense, and it's a pathetic excuse. But many of these MAGA Republicans, that's all they do. They have their pathetic excuses for Orange Man. Mo, why don't we take some phone calls? What do you say? 702-221-7283. And again, that number to call if you want to be a part of the conversation, 702-221-SAVE, even though I can't promise to save all of you. Let's go to Kava, who's up on Pushing the Limits. What's up, Kava?
Hey, so I was listening to what you guys were talking about, and one thing I want to address is that why are we worried about what immigrants like me do? Why are we worried about it? When MAGA attacked the Capitol, why is it okay for them to do what they did? But when we come to U.S., it's all of a sudden it's a huge issue. I'm just trying to, balance the scale.
Well, I'll tell you what, that's what MAGA Republicans try to do. They try to balance the scale. Example, when I bring up January 6th or the 2020 election, well, Hillary Clinton was an election denier. No, she wasn't. She called Donald Trump an illegitimate president for his behavior, and I tend to agree. Hillary Clinton has never said once that Donald Trump won, it wasn't a free and fair election and she won and the Republicans cheated. She's never made a statement like that, but yet when you bring up Donald Trump's lies about the 2020 election, somehow they try to compare it. You bring up January 6th and they bring up Black Lives Matter protest. One has absolutely nothing to do with the other. Example, you had a group of people, hundreds of thousands of people, by the way, that were at the Capitol. Now, most of them didn't commit any crimes that day, but they were there based on a lie that Donald Trump won the 2020 election. The overwhelming majority of Black Lives Matter protesters were not violent, and they were there because they wanted equality. There's a difference between protesting for equality and protesting based on a lie from Orange Turd. That's the difference.
Facts.
Yeah.
Well, January 6th was just a shock value so that we would listen to those people that broke in and attacked police officers.
Right, right.
And my problem here is that as an immigrant myself, I understand that we want to secure the border, sure, whatever. But my problem here is it's never been actually about the border. Now, these MAGA demons, they go on and they say, oh, well, you guys are breaking the law. You can't come into our country, blah, blah, blah. And at the same time, it's like, how can you say that when you don't know who these people are? You've never met them.
Well, here's the
So
thing.
how can
You're
you
right.
judge?
So I agree with you 100%. But here's how we do know. We know that per capita, you have a better chance of being the victim of a crime from somebody who is in this country legally than someone who is illegally in this country. Listen, that doesn't mean I want bad people coming into this country, right? But the overwhelming majority of those people that are breaking the law, that are coming into this country illegally, they're not bad, horrendous murderers like so many on the far right would lead you to believe. You know, it is interesting when a white supremacist commits an atrocity or a crime. I mentioned Texas, El Paso. MAGA Republicans, Laura Ingrams and Sean Hannity's, they won't show imagery of that, but they'll always show imagery on Fox News of black people committing crimes. Geez, I wonder why that is. Why is it that Laura Ingraham, when she does her Klan show that she does every night, she will always demonize brown people and tell LeBron James to shut up and dribble, but she won't tell Ted Nugent to shut up and sing. I'll tell you why. And let me speak very slowly so my MAGA listeners can understand. Laura Ingraham is an evil, racist, bigoted witch, and that is why her own brother won't talk to her, who happens to be gay. Laura Ingraham is a despicable turd and a disgrace for a human being. She's not one. She's a racist B-word. That's what she is. Sean Hannity, Tucker Carlson's of the world, most of the people on Fox News are no better. Laura Ingraham is a disgrace.
And the only reason I'm bringing this up is because as an immigrant, I'm tired of being labeled. I'm tired of the MAGA Republicans coming after us for merely existing. Just because we get to the border doesn't mean we have bad intentions. It means we're human beings. It means that we have a legal right to find asylum.
Sure.
Because like you said before, we have a right to seek asylum because it's the law.
Yes.
Whether they want it like that or not, it's the law. Now, there are a few bad apples, sure. But it doesn't mean it's all of us.
So if we're going to start to try and secure the border and let the right people come in and like as it should be, why can't we pass that bill that will put, I think, 1,500 more officers on the border and the fentanyl screeners and all that just to start moving in the right direction?
Yeah, no, it's a good point. Well, Kava, it's really good to hear from you. I'm going to get to some other callers, my friend, but I appreciate you calling in, sir. You have a great weekend, okay?
All right, thank you for everything you do, Ryan.
I appreciate you saying that. That means a lot, Kava. Thank you so much. 702-221-7283. Again, that number if you want to be a part of the program, 702-221-SAVE. We're talking about last night's State of the Union address. We had Representative Congressman Eric Swalwell on the show. We're taking your phone calls, your reaction to it. Do we have Kimberly Guilfoyle on the line? I don't know. Do we? Wow, this is a shocker. Kimberly, thank you so much for joining us. I really do appreciate you being here. Kimberly, what did you think about the speech last night, and what did you think about Katie Britt, who responded, the Republican response yesterday? Kimberly, what did you think of it?
The best is yet to come.
Thank you, Kimberly. I appreciate that. The best is yet to come. Yes, thank you so much. I'm sorry. I'm so immature. 702-221-7283.
Yes, you are. We all know that.
You get help, you narcissistic bitch.
Wow, Dr. Phil even chiming in. Wow, that's
Man,
interesting. Wow.
You get some great people on the phone here.
I get some of the biggest.
Unbelievable.
I get some of the biggest guests
I
ever.
heard you've had Trump on here.
I have, yeah,
That's
yeah.
crazy.
Also known as John D. Domenico.
He's the best.
702-221-7283. Who is next on the line for us? We have Pedro next. Hi, Pedro. Thanks for calling in. What's on your mind?
Well, I listened to the speech last night, and I was very nervous before I watched it because I've been hearing all this Joe Biden is, can't even tie his shoes. But I was impressed. He nailed it last night, and it was very, very good. I was so impressed with that. And I liked when he went off script and attacked the Republicans. It was awesome. I'm impressed with him.
So, as was I, can I ask you, Pedro? And by the way, I think there were a lot of people that might have been a little worried yesterday. You're not the only one. Tell me why you were worried. Do you listen to right-wing radio, and does it kind of instill in your head sometime that this guy's got all these cognitive problems? Why were you so worried? Tell me why.
Well, it's even like I watch Comedy Central, and they kind of attack Biden on being, kind of
old.
And he is old.
Yeah.
He is old.
Yeah.
And
That's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm old too. But
Me too. Yeah.
but it's just, you hear it from both sides that he's old, and you do see clips. They always put in clips in about him doing things, having faux pas, just fumbling with his words.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I know he has a speech impediment and everything, but it's still everybody harps on that issue. And
that's understandable. That's understandable. Here's what I can tell you, and here's the best thing I could say to you, and I think we'll agree. Obviously, I'm not a physician. Neither are you. Most of the people, I would say just about all of them, that are talking about Joe Biden's cognitive problems and he's unfit, he doesn't even know where he is, are people with zero medical degrees that have absolutely no idea what they're talking about. By the way, they're the same idiots that have said for years now that masks don't work and the vaccines are killing all these people. Again, the same morons with no medical degree that have no idea what they're talking about. We can splice up and put together all the idiotic mumbling and bumblings of Donald Trump, but here's the difference. There's a difference between having a gaffe and saying something that can actually harm or hurt people. Joe Biden at times has gaffes. We all make mistakes. Donald Trump says things on a daily basis that incite violence and promote bigotry and flat out lies. There is a fine line difference there. I don't mind having a president that has gaffes. I do mind having a president that incites an insurrection.
I agree.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your call, sir, and don't you worry. Joe Biden's going to be just fine, and he is up for the job. Okay, I promise you that. Okay.
Okay, I've been telling people to, if you think he's old, watch his speech.
Yeah. Yeah,
that's my response.
They can think Joe Biden is old all they want. Their orange turd that they look up to is a rapist. So that's we can leave it there.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree with you.
Simple as that. Thank you for the call, my man. I appreciate it. You have a good weekend, okay?
All right, you too.
And
Bye.
there's nothing wrong with being old. Okay, I'm getting there too. I'm going to be 44 years old.
Oh, jeez. I can't even remember. Oh, there's a gaff. I can't remember 44. Oh, no. I just turned 67.
That's right.
I'm done.
702-221-7283 is the number to call, 702-221-SAVE. It's interesting because you see the double standard here, and so many Republicans want to call it the two-tier justice system, right? Okay, well, let's go with that for a moment. What would Republicans say if Ocasio-Cortez several years ago wore a Joe Biden hat that was signed by Joe Biden, decked out in all, I don't know, decked out in all this stuff, and maybe somebody that had died, on January 6th, I don't know, and just used it for political purposes? What would they say?
Yeah, and I mean, I've been around a long time because I'm old, and I can't remember a past president except the one that the orange person you talk about,
Orange turd,
that goes on Instagram and begs people for $5 or $10, or buy a piece of this flag, or buy this cup, or buy this hat, or buy selling merchandise. And then we know he's such a great businessman because every one of his companies has flourished, like his casinos and his airline and his football team and his university and his and keep going on. But, it's just, the president has to be respectable and honest, even if he fumbles his words every once in a while, but you could see where he's coming from the heart. That's the most important thing. And guess who else sees that? The other countries and the other people in the world. That's who see that. And when a former president goes on and says, Putin can do whatever he wants, and you're in Ukraine, what are you thinking? I mean, or Poland, what are you thinking? I mean, man.
It's an embarrassment, and it will continue to be an embarrassment so long as Donald Trump is still attempting to run for office. Let's take a few more phone calls. Paul McKeskey joining us in studio. We're talking about last night, the State of the Union speech, and the Republican response of a woman sitting in a kitchen. Very Republican-esque. Let's go to Andy, 702-221-7283. Andy is next on Pushing the Limits. Hi, Andy.
Hi. How you doing today?
I'm doing good, Andy. Thanks for calling in. What's on your mind?
Well, I've listened to four guys a whole lot. Calling from Illinois. His speech was wonderful, as far as it could be. I was a little more hardline. That's not. He is much more empathetic as far as things are concerned, and I appreciate that.
Yep.
I will take that over being the other way anytime.
Yep, I agree.
I think the response was the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen in my life. If that's straight out of Handmaid's Tale.
It's
It
scary,
is straight
it's
out of
scary,
Handmaid's Tale.
right? I thought she'd reach around, grab a knife from behind her kitchen, and start stabbing the camera or something.
That was, yeah, it was. I would agree with that. It was pretty scary. I think, there were more than one thing that I appreciated, but one of the things in his speech that I appreciated more was that we will find out how strong an influence women have very shortly. I think that is going to be a huge thing.
I loved it when he said that, and he was looking right at some of these disgusting Supreme Court justices like the Brett Kavanaughs and the Barretts. I loved it when he did that. I'm so glad you brought that up. I will also say this in regards to Katie Britt. I had two people that are both actors I texted them this morning, and I think I mentioned this. Tom Arnold. I was texting with Tom Arnold this morning, and Tom Arnold said she wouldn't have even gotten a cameo role in one of his horrible movies. That was his. He said that, not me.
But that makes it all the more poignant.
Yeah, and then I had Evan.
Absolutely.
I had Evan Stone, who's a pretty popular male porn star, who texted me, and he said she probably wouldn't have been able to get an AVN award, an Adult Film Star Award, for that performance. So those are those are pretty good digs from two people that I know that are friends of mine. So yeah.
It was just so weird, right? It was just weird, and they've done the response before, and even though you don't agree with it, it's been done respectful. Behind a podium, last night it was weird.
It was weird, but this is where the Republican Party is. Let's put a woman in the kitchen. I'm sorry, that says what you need to know about somebody on the far right.
again, too, let me ask you this. Since you brought up the Supreme Court justices,
Yes.
I have to ask you a question because this has been bothering me.
Yes, shoot.
Why do you think in the case that they took up about being able to kick Trump off the ballot,
Yes.
why did the three not dissent?
Because
why did they suggest?
Because it's rule of law.
I don't understand it.
Because it's rule of law. There's no. The problem is Donald Trump hasn't been convicted for insurrection. Jack Smith didn't put that. He wasn't indicted for that reason. Why? Not because they think he wasn't responsible, but because it's very difficult to prove in a courtroom. Andrew, I got to get to some other callers. It's a good question you asked. It's a good question
Pleasure,
you asked.
guys.
Yep,
Yeah.
appreciate you.
And sometimes
you bet.
And sometimes, there's different degrees of murder too.
Right.
And they'll charge them with a little lower degree because it's easier. The tougher degree is harder to prove.
And Andrew, it's a good question you ask, and I
Yes.
agree with what you said, Paul.
Yep.
But the bottom line is Democrats need to stop focusing on trying to get Donald Trump off the ballot, and they need to start focusing more on how do we defeat Donald Trump. Yesterday was the step in the right direction. They have to continue to do that, but it's a good call, Andrew, and I appreciate you. 702-221-7283. 702-221-SAVE. Let's go to Lynn. Lynn is next up on Pushing the Limits. Hi, Lynn.
Hi, gentlemen. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for calling in, Lynn. What's on your mind?
Well, I just wanted to comment on President Biden's speech last night. I thought he was outstanding, and I really thought that he shut the Republicans down. He went after all their talking points, his plans that he wants to do, and I was nervous at first because I thought, oh boy, they're going to eat him alive. And what I saw was a strong president that is going to take us into the future.
Yeah,
and I think that's what we need now. I always felt that Joe Biden was never meant to be, and he was never meant to be one of these super presidents that they'll write about for years and years and years. I think he was more put there as a transitional president to point us in the right direction, to clean up the mess that Donald Trump left behind, and to get us moving again.
Yeah,
and when I shut off the television last night, I felt a lot better. I really believe that we're going to be okay. People just got to get out there and they've got to vote. Yeah. And this is our country, and we have to decide which way it's going to be.
Yeah, he did a couple things I thought were very good. First of all, he poked a little bit of fun at himself and said, "Yes, I am old." Then he made a little joke of I should leave right now after I got this ovation. And then he went along and like you just said, he attacked the points that the Republicans are holding against him and made a point for what he's really doing. I thought that was very clever.
I agree. Lynn, it's good to hear from you, and I really do appreciate your phone call. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks a lot, guys. Have a good evening.
All right, take care. We'll take one more phone call because we're running against the clock here. Let's take.
Is it Julie?
No, it's not. I did not take. I did not take her call today. That's what I'm going to do from now on. I'm going to ask people if I should take her call. Maybe some people will miss her. Let's go to Damon. Damon, I got about 1 minute for you, my man. What's going on?
Perfect timing.
Good.
Julie, baby, I'm sorry for Brian. I apologize for him. I want to hear from you, baby.
All right, just because of that, I'll take her call on Monday. Go ahead. Yep.
Thank you, Brian.
Check Brian's blood pressure.
I think in all the years I've been listening to you, Brian, this is the most buffoon-free show I think you've ever done. And I think it has to be because Biden did so good.
Thank you.
It has to be. It has to be because the buffoons just ain't here like they normally are, Brian. It's, a couple of them, of course, but it's just not like normal.
You know what's
so
interesting?
He had to do a good job.
Damon, you want to know something? You just reminded me of something. I remember, of course, we all do January 6th. The following day, my former co-host didn't show up to work. I wonder why.
You're right.
I wonder
You're
why. Right. So we did get a few MAGAs today, but there's really not a lot of negative. I don't care. Even if you're a staunch Republican, they'll say, oh, it was a bunch of lies in this speech. Oh, really? What did he lie about? I don't know, but he lied. There's really not a lot of negative to say about Joe Biden's performance yesterday.
People say he lied. That's what
He lied. And these are the same people who support Donald Trump. We've got this lunatic, Katie Britt, who talks about rape and wants to lecture us on rape. Meanwhile, she wants us to vote for the liable rapist. Damon, you can't make
She
this
looked
stuff
like a
up.
Stepford wife, Brian. She looked like a
Yes,
Stepford wife.
yes, exactly. That's exactly what I
She
thought.
really did. Damon, if you call in tomorrow, Monday, to start the show, and Julie calls in, I'll let you guys talk at the same time, okay?
Thank you, Brian. I don't want to sound misogynistic, but I know what she needs.
Okay. All right, I'll leave that one
Happy
alone,
Friday.
Damon. Her husband would call that an ad hominem attack. Thank you, Damon, for the phone call. Mr. Paul McKeskey, I love talking politics with you. This has been a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
Yes, and we got March Madness around the corner, so next
Ooh.
time when you come in,
We got to talk about probably 20 teams that could win it.
Yes.
So you could get a 20-1 bet probably going.
That's right. We got to talk about that next week. Follow me on my socials. For everybody listening out there, subscribe to my YouTube page. It's free. At PTL Radio Show. You'll see extra content up there. At PTL Radio Show. I'm also on TikTok and Twitch and X at PTL Radio. At PTL Radio Show. We also want you to subscribe to the Occupy Democrats Facebook page. So subscribe, join, engage. I always talk to my listeners, love me or hate me. I always engage with you. We got some big guests coming up. I know that the current Attorney General, Aaron Ford, is going to be joining us on the show this month. I just received word that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is going to be joining us on the show. We get the biggest guests on this show, even Kimberly Guilfoyle from time to time. Congressman Eric Swalwell, I appreciate him joining us. And, of course, Paul McKeskey, the former NBA veteran who did post up Larry Bird. I have the picture to prove it.
Yep.
Thank you all. Thank you all for joining us. We'll see you tomorrow, Monday, everybody, 12 to 2 p.m. Pacific time. Have a great weekend.